All right. Well, thank you. I hope I live up to that wonderful introduction. All right. Okay. So I want to start this by asking for a volunteer. I want your keys. Give me your keys. Come on. You didn't know it would be that interactive, huh? Oh, no, that's fine. Are these important to you? Do you want them back afterwards? Okay, they're mine now. No, I'm going to put them here. They'll be here. All right. So the question that we often ask is, how do we fight feminism? It's multinational, billions of dollars. It's a huge organization, lots of power, lots of influence. Now here's what I'd like to offer. Another question. Should we fight it? Should we bother fighting it?
Yes.
I'm going to give you another argument. Let's not fight feminism. Just hold it. Just put a pin in that counter argument you're already developing here. Okay, I'm going to take you to a completely other dimension. If I can get this working. I apologize. My own iPhone crapped out. No longer, the battery does not work. All right, this is an extended quote from The Power of Habit: Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business by Charles Duhigg. And it's about, do you guys know who Michael Phelps is? Yeah, he's possibly the most successful Olympian swimmer in human history. He has 28 medals to his name. He hasn't just broken numerous records. He's also broken records on how many medals he's won in an Olympic event. So this guy is very, very successful, and this is an extended quote about his daily routine that he engaged in. When Michael Phelps' alarm went off at 6 a.m. on the morning of August 13th, 2008, he crawled out of bed in the Olympic Village in Beijing and fell right into his routine. He pulled on a pair of sweatpants and walked to breakfast. He had already won 3 gold medals earlier in that week, giving him 9 in his career, and had 2 races that day. By 7 a.m., he was in the cafeteria eating his regular race day menu of eggs, oatmeal, and 4 energy shakes, the first of more than 6,000 calories he would consume over the next 16 hours. Phelps' first race, the 200-meter butterfly, was his strongest event, and it was scheduled for 10 o'clock that day. 2 hours before the starting gun fired, he began his usual stretching regime, starting with his arms, then his back, then working down his ankles. At 8:30, he slipped into the pool and began his first warm-up lap, 800 meters of mixed styles, followed by 600 meters of kicking, 400 meters pulling a buoy between his legs, 200 meters of stroke. This is before he did his race. 200 meters of stroke drills and a series of 25-meter sprints to elevate his heart rate. The workout took precisely 45 minutes. Then he clamped his headphones over his ears, cranked up the hip-hop mix he played before every race, and waited. At 9:56 a.m., 4 minutes before the race start, Phelps stood behind his starting block, bouncing slightly on his toes. Maybe he was nervous as well. When the announcer said his name, Phelps stepped onto the block, as he always did before a race, and then he stepped down, as he always did. He swung his arms 3 times, as he had every race since he was 12 years old. He stepped on the blocks again, got into his stance, and when the gun sounded, leapt. Phelps knew that something was wrong as soon as he hit the water. There was moisture inside his goggles. He couldn't tell if they were leaking from the top or bottom, but as he broke the water's surface and began swimming, he hoped the leak wouldn't become too bad. By the second turn, however, everything was getting blurry. As he approached the 3rd turn and final lap, the cups of his goggles were completely filled. Phelps couldn't see anything, not the line along the pool's bottom, not the black T marking the approaching wall. He couldn't see how many strokes were left. For most swimmers, losing your sight in the middle of an Olympic final would be a cause for panic. But Phelps was calm. Everything else that day had gone according to plan. The leaking goggles were a minor deviation, but for one which he was prepared. He had a coach who would take him through every single step, from the moment he woke up to the moment he was on the winner's podium. Every single step. He had a habit associated with every single step. When he was blinded in the swimming pool, he ran that tape in his head and managed to win not just the gold. He broke the world record, completely blind. That is the power of a story. That is the power of the habits instilled into a champion. And Michael Phelps, I can't pronounce any name, would never have been a champion. He had the physique for it, he had the obsession for it, but there are plenty of men, even at the Olympic level, who have the right physique, the right obsession. It was his coach giving him the right story that made him a champion. His coach giving him the day-to-day habits to support that story, that positive identity that brought him from the moment he woke up to the moment he was a champion on the winner's block. That identity, and that positive identity to achieve, to move towards, and a way to develop it, a concrete way to develop it. Very powerful. And this is an incredibly successful man who would never have been successful without his coach and that story and that positive identity. All right, just a few items about men in our society and what men do. Oops, a little bit off track here. Okay. Can anyone tell me when a woman becomes a net taxpayer to the state? Never. Every single woman is a net drain. They never pay as much taxes as they take in services. Almost every single man, if he has a job, will be a net taxpayer. So you talk about how everything is built by men and mostly maintained by men. Everything is paid for by men. Men are why we have what we have. And the great work of society is to connect a young man's desire to differentiate from the feminine. And that's not contempt for the feminine. It's a desire to feel like you have something to give the world because you're a young man, something unique. It's not contempt. It's wanting to have something of your own to give. And the reason why it isn't contempt is they don't express it towards women. They do express it towards men who haven't differentiated and developed their own unique gift to give the world, but they don't express it towards women. The great work of society is to take that desire to differentiate, give young men habits and steps to develop a positive identity of championship. And it doesn't have to be world championship. It can be the champion trash collector, the champion barista. No, that's a bad example, but or maybe it isn't. You know, it's being good at what you do, taking pride in what you do, being honorable, having a reward at the end of the day for what you do, having a sense of success, having a belief that you're bringing something unique as a young man to a world that needs you and needs what you are bringing as a young man to it. So you take that desire to differentiate, you bring it into a positive identity of championship and uniqueness. What does our society say to young men? Does it do any of that? No, it doesn't. What it tells young men is that everything that they have as young men is toxic. It's privilege. It creates the patriarchy. It makes things worse. And also, their desire to differentiate from women, what's that? It's contempt and hatred towards women. It's not wanting to have something unique. Because women have an obvious, they give to society and it's obvious. Men, young men, want to differentiate from that. That's it. And we are shaming that desire. And yet, that is the great work of society, is to take that desire to differentiate, turn it into a positive identity of mutual benefit to young men and to society. And we see that the appeal with Peterson, that's exactly what Peterson is doing. And unless you're going to tell me that young men don't know their own minds, Peterson is giving them something that they very much want. Okay. So this central task is why we have a civilization, this process. And the reason why is because young men will sacrifice more in cooperation, they will sacrifice more in conflict, and they will sacrifice more in competition for the societies that they want to serve. If you don't capture that as a society, you will be overrun by a society that does do it. Or you will collapse into your own contradictions and nothing will remain. So there is no future for a civilization that has completely walked away from this process. Once again, net taxpayers are men. The people creating everything we exist within, men. Maintaining it, men. You don't capture their identity, you don't give them a positive identity of service to society, you are going to lose all of that. In fact, I would go so far to say that because we have walked away from this process, we don't live in a civilization. We are actually ignorant barbarians, squatting in the decaying remains of someone else's civilization. All right, so essentially the situation that we're in is that our institutions, our social institutions, have decided to just walk away of what I would refer to as the keys of the kingdom, because this process is required for civilization to emerge, to maintain itself, to protect itself, and to flourish and become successful. So our institutions have said, we don't want that. We don't want those keys. We don't want to maintain them. In fact, if you said, hey, maybe it's important, maybe these are important, they would tell you that even saying that is immoral. That even saying that this is an important process is something that we shouldn't even entertain. Because after all, the future is what? The future is female. So let's just walk away from this process that is central to every civilization that we have throughout human history, to take men's desire to differentiate and turn it into the process of serving society, or mutual beneficial relationship with society. All right. We've said, so I'm going back to my question. Should we fight feminism?
Yeah.
Your opinion is noted. I'm going to make your, but what's this, what feminism is doing? They're walking away from the keys to the castle. They're saying, okay, when we say, well, should you just leave that process, that essential process that maintains society? Should you just leave it and walk away? I mean, maybe that's important. And they're like, oh my God, you're such a misogynist for even suggesting it. Like, aren't they important? No, the future is female. Don't you need them? This is what we're doing. We're trying to convince them to take them back. Do you really want them to take them back? No. Let them walk away. Because at some point, we got to realize we got the keys to the motherfucking castle. Yeah. All right. And so, my real question isn't, should we fight feminism? My real question to you all is, what kind of civilization do you want to live in? There you go.